Long before the memory of kingdoms, before mountains knew their names, there was a land where the wind sang to the sand. In that land stood a solitary village, woven from clay and light, where the people spoke in riddles and believed that every shadow carried a secret. Among them lived a young wanderer named Arin. He was neither poor nor noble, but he carried a restlessness that none could name. When others danced at dusk, Arin watched the sun's dying flame and wondered why his heart felt like an empty jar in the middle of an endless well. The village elder often told him, "The soul is a road that bends inward, not outward." But Arin could not understand. He had walked the outer roads, across dunes, through markets, into temples of forgotten gods, and yet, his spirit still wandered in silence. One night, as the wind roared like a beast mourning its own echo, Arin stood by the well at the edge of the village. There, the dust began to swirl, glowing faintly as if stirred by unseen hands. From its spiral emerged an old traveler, cloaked in robes that shimmered like the shifting desert itself. His eyes were dark mirrors, his voice sounded like memory. "Why do you search for what already breathes within you?" he asked. Arin bowed his head. "Because I do not know who I am." The old traveler smiled. "Then you are ready." He handed Arin a small mirror carved from windstone, its surface rippling like water though solid as glass. "When the time comes, the wind will guide you to what you fear most, and there, you will meet yourself." Before Arin could speak, the old man's shape scattered into the dust, dissolving into the whistling night. Only the mirror remained, heavy with unseen truth. Arin lifted it to the moonlight, but the mirror showed nothing, not even his reflection. Just a quiet shimmer, as though it waited for a face not yet born. That night, he left the village without a farewell, guided only by the sound of wind and the pull of something nameless within him. And thus began the journey of the self, where the world itself would become his teacher. The desert gave way to stone, and stone to whispering reeds. For 7 nights and 7 dawns, Arin walked without direction, yet the wind always came from ahead, as if beckoning him onward. On the 8th dawn, he reached a river so clear it seemed to flow with liquid glass. Its voice murmured softly, carrying memories of all who had crossed it. When Arin knelt to drink, he saw faces in its depths, some smiling, some grieving, all flickering like forgotten dreams. He reached for the mirror of windstone, holding it above the water. For the first time, the surface trembled, and the reflection that appeared was not his own. A woman's face emerged, serene, distant, crowned with silver hair braided with leaves. Her eyes were the color of dawn, and her expression carried both sorrow and strength. "You seek yourself," she said through the ripples, her voice both within and beyond the river. "But you cannot find truth in running from silence." Startled, Arin spoke, "Who are you?" "I am Elandra, the keeper of reflections, ****. Every soul that forgets itself finds me, and in my waters, they see what they've lost." Arin bowed low. "Then show me who I am." Elandra's gaze softened. "You are not yet ready. The river can only show what the heart dares to remember." Her form faded, leaving the river calm once more. Confused and humbled, Arin sat by the bank until the stars appeared. The wind brushed against his face, whispering a language he could almost understand. He realized then that discovery was not about the journey itself, but about listening. For every grain of sand, every drop of water, every sigh of air held pieces of a truth too vast to name. And as he drifted to sleep beneath the whispering reeds, the mirror of windstone glowed faintly in his hand, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if the two had begun to speak the same silent language. By the time the moon had turned thrice, Arin's feet had touched the edge of a great valley. There, among cliffs carved by centuries of wind, stood a city, vast and gleaming, yet strangely hollow in sound. Its towers shimmered like mirages, its streets paved with white stone that remembered every footstep. Arin entered at dawn. The air tasted of incense and old stories. At first glance, the city seemed alive, merchants bartering, children laughing, banners swaying in gold and crimson light. But as he walked deeper, he noticed that their eyes were dim, their words empty, their laughter hollow. Each face he passed seemed painted, each gesture rehearsed. He stopped before a great square where a statue stood, a towering figure draped in robes of bronze. At its feet, the crowd knelt in silent worship, repeating the same phrase again and again. "We are what we appear to be." Arin's heart tightened. He thought of his own reflection, the one he had never seen. Then, from among the crowd, stepped a tall man clad in a mantle of silver feathers. His face was handsome but sharp, his smile both kind and cold. "I am Kale, the voice of the city," he said, his tone smooth as silk over steel. "We have no need for questions here. We wear the masks we choose, and they become our truth. Stay with us, and you will never be uncertain again." Arin felt the pull of Kale's words like the tide against a stone. For a moment, he longed to rest, to belong, to stop searching. But the mirror of windstone grew warm in his hand, and when he looked at it, its surface shimmered violently, rejecting the stillness around him. "I cannot," Arin whispered. "I do not yet know who I am." Kale's smile faded. "Then you will wander forever." The city echoed his words, the towers, the banners, even the air repeating them until they became 1,000 whispering winds. Arin turned and fled through the silent crowd, who watched him without expression. As he passed the gate, the illusion began to crumble, laughter fading into sighs, towers dissolving into dust. When he looked back, there was no city at all, only an empty valley filled with wind and memory. He fell to his knees and laughed through tears. The voice of the wind answered softly, as if proud. "To seek yourself, you must first unlearn what the world told you to be." And the mirror grew lighter, as though it, too, had shed a mask. The valley stretched for days, until stone turned to ash and air to heat. Arin walked beneath skies painted in crimson haze, where no bird dared fly and no water dared flow. The ground cracked beneath his feet, and the wind whispered not in comfort, but in warning. By dusk of the third day, he reached a canyon glowing faintly from within. A faint hum pulsed through the air, alive, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the earth. At its center, he found a ring of ancient stones, each marked with symbols older than memory. From the middle rose a flame, tall, silent, colorless. It burned without smoke, casting no shadow. Arin approached and knelt, for something within the flame called his name, not with sound, but with recognition. Then the fire spoke. Its voice was neither male nor female, but both, an ancient harmony of all things that ever were. "I am the fire that dreams," it said. "I burn in every heart that dares to awaken. Why have you come?" Arin bowed his head. "To find who I am." The fire flickered higher. "Then you must give up what you are not." Arin hesitated. "What do you mean?" And the fire answered by showing him visions. He saw himself as a boy, trying to please every voice but his own. He saw the faces of those who praised him when he became what they needed, and those who turned away when he spoke his truth. He saw the weight of every false name he had carried, son, friend, worker, wanderer, and how each one had chained him to others' expectations. The sight burned through him, leaving his spirit bare and trembling. He cried out, "If I let all that go, what remains?" The fire whispered gently, "You." Arin dropped the mirror of windstone into the flame, and for a moment, it glowed so bright it outshone the sun. When the light faded, the mirror hovered in the air, now clear as morning water. And for the first time, Arin saw not his face, but 1,000 faces within it, child, elder, warrior, poet, all threads of the same endless soul. Then the fire dimmed and said, "Go, seeker. The wind will carry you to the mountain that remembers. There, your shadow awaits." The air cooled, and the canyon fell silent once more. Arin rose, feeling lighter than ever, as though the fire had burned away not just his fears, but the walls between his heart and the world. He began walking again, the mirror at his side, no longer heavy, but humming softly, like a companion that had begun to dream. Days passed in a rhythm of wind and solitude. Arin followed the trail of cool air that whispered through the canyons, guiding him toward the horizon. At last, the land rose sharply into a vast spine of stone, the mountain that remembers. Its peak pierced the clouds like a spear of ancient thought. The slopes shimmered with frozen mist, and each gust of wind seemed to carry fragments of forgotten voices. They spoke of loss, of longing, of truths buried deep beneath pride and pain. As Arin climbed, the air grew thin, and with it, his certainty began to crumble. Every step seemed to echo not in the air, but in his own chest. When he looked back, the path behind him was gone, swallowed by clouds. There was no turning back. By twilight, he reached a plateau where a stone gate stood, carved with the image of a man and his shadow facing one another. Between them burned a single word in the old tongue, no. As he stepped through the gate, the wind stilled, utterly, unnaturally still. Then, from the mist, another figure emerged. It was himself. Same face, same voice, but eyes dark as ink and smile sharp as broken glass. The mirror of windstone trembled in Arin's hand. "I am what you've cast aside," said the shadow. "The hunger, the doubt, the voice that whispers when you pretend to be good." Arin's breath caught. "You are not me." The shadow laughed, a sound like stone cracking under ice. "I am every thought you've buried to seem worthy. Every anger you called peace. Every fear you named humility. You cannot reach truth while rejecting half of what you are." Arin raised the mirror, and the reflection showed both of them, neither whole without the other. He realized that to deny his shadow was to deny his depth, to embrace it was to see his own humanity. He stepped forward. The shadow mirrored him. When they met, their forms dissolved into light, two rivers joining to become one sea. The wind howled again, no longer empty but full of song. And when the light faded, Arin stood alone on the mountaintop, yet no longer divided within himself. The mirror in his hand now shimmered with both darkness and light, balanced, breathing, alive. He looked to the horizon. The clouds parted, revealing a vast ocean beyond the desert and valleys. The wind whispered, "Go. What you seek next is not within, but among." And so Arin descended the mountain, not as the man who had left the village, but as one who carried the world within his heart. The descent from the mountain was like waking from a long dream. The air grew warmer, the wind gentler, carrying the scent of salt and faraway rain. For the first time in many moons, Arin heard laughter carried by the breeze, human, alive, unburdened. He followed the sound until the earth ended in silver sands that melted into the horizon. There lay the sea of listening, vast, motionless, yet alive with quiet resonance. Each wave shimmered like breath made visible, each ripple humming softly, as though the ocean were whispering secrets to itself. At the shoreline, a woman sat cross-legged upon a rock, eyes closed, her hair woven with shells that sang faintly in the wind. When Arin approached, she opened her eyes, the deep green of a storm waiting to be born. "I am Lyra, keeper of tides," she said, her voice soft but filled with the gravity of depth. "The sea remembers all that the sky forgets. What brings you to its edge?" Arin bowed. "The wind led me here. I seek to understand what remains when all illusions fall away." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then you must listen, not with ears, but with presence." She gestured to the sea. "Every drop here carries a memory, a prayer, a song, a sorrow. Listen long enough, and you will hear the rhythm that binds all hearts together." Arin sat beside her and closed his eyes. At first, he heard only the sound of waves. Then came the murmurs, countless voices layered upon one another, the laughter of children, the weeping of lovers, the sighs of those who'd walked before him. Their voices did not clash, they harmonized. It was not a song of perfection, but of unity, every flaw, every joy, woven into one living music. Tears filled Arin's eyes. "I can hear them," he whispered. "Every soul, connected." Lyra nodded. "And yet most walk the world as if alone. They forget that to know oneself is to hear the song of others. Your reflection lives not only in the mirror, but in the eyes that meet yours." As dawn rose, Lyra stood and touched his shoulder. "Go, seeker. Beyond this sea lies the garden of still winds. There, you must learn not to listen, but to be silent." The waves sighed in farewell. Arin bowed deeply and began his walk along the shore, the mirror of windstone now clear as the sea itself, its light dancing with every step. Behind him, Lyra's song rose, wordless, infinite, carrying his name into the horizon. Arin journeyed for many days beyond the sea of listening, guided only by silence. No bird sang, no breeze stirred. Even his own footsteps made no sound upon the pale earth. The air itself seemed to be holding its breath. At last, he came upon a place unlike any he had known, a vast plain of silver grass that shimmered though no wind touched it. In the center stood a single tree, ancient and immense, its leaves unmoving though they glowed faintly with inner light. Around it spread the garden of still winds, where the world paused to remember itself. As Arin stepped into the garden, the mirror of windstone ceased its humming. It became weightless, as if waiting for something beyond sound or motion. He sat beneath the great tree, feeling a stillness so complete it began to frighten him. Without the movement of air or voice, he felt the boundaries of his thoughts begin to blur. Then a soft light descended, not from the sky, but from within him. It spread through his chest, warm and infinite, and he heard a voice that was not separate from his own. "Who are you?" it asked. He opened his mouth to answer, and realized that every name he might speak was a shadow of truth. He saw all the faces he had worn, all the journeys he had walked, all the teachers he had met. Each had given him a piece of the mirror, but the mirror was never the light itself. He whispered at last, "I am. I am what remains." The tree stirred, its leaves trembling for the first time. A breeze moved through the silver grass, carrying no sound, only presence. And in that moment, Arin understood. Self-discovery was never about finding a single form, but recognizing the endless flow of being. He was not apart from the wind, nor the river, nor the fire, he was all of them, moving through different dreams. The voice within him spoke once more. "When you cease to seek, you become. When you cease to name, you know." The garden shimmered, and every blade of grass bent in silent bow, as if the world itself acknowledged his awakening. Arin rose. The mirror in his hand was gone, or perhaps, it had melted into him. He looked at his reflection in the air, and saw the light of the mountain, the sea, the river, and the fire glowing within his own gaze. The silence was no longer empty, it was full, vast, eternal, alive. He turned toward the horizon where dawn waited, knowing one final path remained, not toward discovery, but toward return. Arin descended from the garden of still winds with a quiet joy that had no name. The silver grass faded into forests, the forests into valleys, and the valleys into the familiar desert of his youth. Yet everything was changed, not the world itself, but his seeing. As he approached the village where he had first wandered restless and empty, the wind stirred behind him. It whispered in the voices of those he had met, the old traveler, Elandra, Kale, Lyra, and carried fragments of all he had learned, the fire that burns, the mountain that remembers, the sea that listens, the garden that stills. The villagers watched him come, sensing a difference they could not name. Arin did not speak of the mirror, the fire, or the sea. He only walked among them, listening to their hearts, seeing their hidden sorrows, and offering a presence that carried no expectation, only understanding. Children followed him like shadows, asking questions he no longer feared to answer. The elders nodded, as if finally recognizing a familiar spirit reborn. And in every gesture, a hand extended, a glance held, a word spoken, Arin carried the echo of all his teachers, the wisdom of every path he had walked. One evening, he stood at the edge of the village, holding nothing but the memory of wind and light. The mirror of windstone had vanished, yet he no longer needed it. He felt the wind fold into his chest, carrying him, guiding him, reminding him that discovery is never finished, it flows endlessly, as all life does. And in that moment, he understood the deepest truth of his journey. To know oneself is not to possess a single answer, but to move with the world in constant awakening, seeing, listening, feeling, and returning again and again. Arin smiled, the wind circling him like a familiar song. The village, the mountains, the rivers, the sea, and the stars all seemed to breathe together. He had become a living bridge between what is hidden and what is known, a seeker who had found home not in place, but in the eternal journey of being. And so the wind carried his name quietly, endlessly, through the deserts and mountains, the seas and gardens, for those who would listen, and for those who still sought themselves. In the end, Arin's journey reveals that the deepest truth we seek is not found in distant places but awakened within, when we dare to face every part of ourselves with courage. His return teaches that a soul becomes whole not by escaping the world but by listening, remembering, and rising in harmony with all things. And so, like the wind, we too must keep moving, becoming, unlearning, and rediscovering the quiet light that has always lived within us.